Welcome to Shuffle Source. I'm your host Brandon and I'm excited to be back to be upgrading another Commander Precon upgrade video. This time we will be upgrading the Temur Roar Precon deck from the Tarkir Dragonstorm set. Let's get into it. Really fast, before discussing the commander that we will be using, let's quickly go over the Precon upgrade format that we use here at Shuffle Source. The first item here is that you'll notice we will either use the primary or the secondary commander. Next, we have a cap of around $100 or less that we use when upgrading these Precon decks. We will also be adding 10 cards and removing 10 cards from the deck. Additionally, we will be adding a few what we call no budget options for this deck, and these are for people who either already have the cards or maybe want to trade for them or have a little bit extra budget to push this deck even further. There is also a new section called Other Considerations where I will speak about some other options you can consider if you wanted to optimize this deck even further and have it just play better for you. And lastly, we do use market value pricing off of TCG Player at the time of recording, which will be displayed at the bottom of the screen while we're discussing the cards. So the commander we decided to use to upgrade the Commander Precon deck, Temur Roar, is going to be Ureni of the Unwritten. For 4 colorless, a green, a blue, and a red, Ureni is a 7/7 legendary creature spirit dragon that has flying and trample. Whenever Ureni enters or attacks, look at the top 8 cards of your library. You may put a dragon creature card from among them onto the battlefield. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this is all about Dragons Matter, baby. We are here with a dragon typal deck and I am here for it. So as you can see, this is a high cost commander, but being able to cheat out dragons is a pretty amazing ability. Dragons in general tend to be very strong creatures with amazing abilities, so being able to get them out for free is very powerful. I really like that you get to choose out of the top 8 cards from your library. That way, if you happen to hit multiple dragons, you can select which dragons will be the best fit for you in the situation. It's important to note that his ability puts the creature onto the battlefield, so there is no casting that is happening, which means our opponents can't cast a counterspell for the dragon that's entering off of Ureni's ability. It does also mean, however, that if you have anything that benefits from a cast trigger, it won't work with that either, so it's a bit of give and take, but I think it's overall positive. So the idea here is you really want to be getting out big, impactful dragons, and we want to do that by ramping and reducing the cost of our commander and other dragons as much as possible so that we can get them on the board early and we can start taking advantage of their payoffs. So the direction we want to take when upgrading this deck is to increase the amount of ramp in cost reducers. We want to add more impactful dragons, and we want to put some cards in there that will either help protect or improve our dragon's output. So the first of our additions is Cavern Horde Dragon, which you can pick up for $15.03. It is 7 mana and 2 red for a 6/6 creature dragon that says this spell costs X less to cast, where X is the greatest number of artifacts an opponent controls. It also has flying, trample, and haste, and whenever Cavern Horde Dragon deals combat damage to a player, you create a treasure token for each artifact that player controls. So I know $15 may seem like a steep cost, but this is a strong dragon with great keywords, and having the ability to come out cheaper is also very nice. Artifacts are very common in the game, especially treasure tokens. So this can easily come in for 2 or 3 cheaper by the time you're actually ready to play it. Also, because of the fact that it has flying, trample, and haste, you should be able to swing in and hit an opponent the turn it comes in to already trigger its second ability to refund you some of the cost in treasure tokens. And the craziest part is it's not even based on the amount of damage you get through, it's based on the number of artifacts your opponent has. So even if they do block and you're able to even get through a single point of damage, you still create a treasure token for each artifact. And I also like that it's more of a budget-friendly version than his bigger brother, Ancient Copper Dragon. To be honest, if you have both cards, run both cards. But honestly, even if you can get just Cavern Horde Dragon, this is a great include and you won't regret adding it to your deck. Next we have, coming in at $2.14, we have Dragon Speaker Shaman. For 1 colorless and 2 red, we have a 2/2 creature human barbarian shaman that reads dragon spells you cast 2 less to cast. So there's a really simple reason why we want to add this card. It's just another good way to discount the high cost dragons you have in your deck, including your commander. It can really help with just being able to get them out much sooner. And honestly, if you're able to get even 2 reductions out of this card, it is already paid for itself. Next, for 25 cents, you can get Essence Flux. For 1 blue mana, we have an instant that reads, exile a target creature you control, then return that card to the battlefield under its owner's control. If it's a spirit, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So we really like this card because it's a cheap protection spell for your commander, and really any creature that you want to keep on the board. Not to mention, when your commander comes back to the battlefield, it will trigger its Enter the Battlefield ability again, looking for another dragon to bring on the battlefield, and it just so happens Ureni is a spirit, so he will also benefit from the +1/+1 counter. This card also works great with Miram on the battlefield because it's going to copy whatever dragon you use this on. Our next edition, coming in at $7.46, we have Fanatic of Ronus. For 1 colorless and 1 green, we have a 1/4 creature snake druid that has a tap ability to add 1 green, or it has Ferocious. Tap, add 4 green, activate only if you have a creature with power 4 or greater. And then it also has Internalize for 2 colorless and 2 green. This says, exile this card from your graveyard, create a token that's a copy of it, except it's a 4/4 black zombie snake druid with no mana cost. Eternalize only as a sorcery. So we really like this card. It comes down early and is a great source of ramp for your deck. With pretty much any of the dragons in your deck, it will be able to take advantage of the Ferocious tap ability to start giving yourself 4 green mana. This is huge because being able to tap for 4 mana can really help with getting your commander and other dragons out earlier. Also, if for some reason it dies or it's in your graveyard, you can pay to use the Eternalize ability and bring it to the battlefield as a 4/4. This then allows you to have it trigger its own condition for Ferocious and start tapping for 4 green mana on its own, giving it the ability to be a very self-sufficient piece and not having to rely on other stronger creatures. Our next edition, coming in at 80 cents, is Garruk's Uprising. For 2 colorless and 1 green, we have an enchantment that reads, when this enchantment enters, if you control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. Creatures you control have trample, and whenever a creature you control with power 4 or greater enters, draw a card. This card is absolutely perfect to add to this deck. The nice thing about dragons is they tend to be power 4 or greater, and your deck is filled with them. This card will help continue the card draw on your deck, and you will also give your entire board trample. Now, a lot of dragons have trample already, but for those that don't, will absolutely benefit from this. Now, dragons tend to have an evasive body, meaning they have flying typically, but even if your opponent has cheaper flyers like spirits, for example, having the trample will really help with pushing that additional damage through. It's also nice that this card replaces itself by drawing a card if you happen to play it later after you already have a creature with power 4 or greater on the battlefield. Card draw definitely helps win games, and I like that this triggers off of entering and not casting because your commander's ability, again, will have a dragon enter the battlefield, so you can really start drawing a lot of extra cards with this card in your deck, and I really think you should include it. Our next edition is a little bit of a pricey one, coming in at $23.21. We have Klauth, Unrivaled Ancient. For 5 colorless and 1 red and 1 green, we have a 4/4 legendary creature dragon that has flying and haste, and whenever Klauth Unrivaled Ancient attacks, add X mana in any combination of colors where X is the total power of attacking creatures. Spend this mana only to cast spells. Until the end of turn, you do not lose this mana as steps and phases end. Now, Klauth is not the strongest or the toughest dragon, but like most dragons, it does have flying. It's also nice that it does have haste, so the turn it comes in, you can really take advantage of his primary ability. Now, as you can imagine, in a deck that has very expensive creature spells, like dragons for example, Klauth and maybe even one other attacking creature has the ability to get you around 10 or more extra mana in your mana pool, which can make a serious difference in the amount of spells that you can cast on a given turn. This is also a good way to potentially help you cast or recast your commander if in case it was removed from the battlefield and you have to pay that expensive commander tax on an already expensive commander. This deck really does need a lot of extra mana, and Klauth will help deliver that for you. Our next edition, coming in at $8.59, we have Miram, Sentinel Worm. For 3 colorless, a green, a blue, and a red, we have a 6/6 legendary creature Dragon Spirit that has flying and ward 2. Whenever another non-token dragon enters the battlefield under your control, create a token that's a copy of it, except the token isn't legendary if the dragon is legendary. Miram is a very strong dragon for 6 mana. Your deck is filled to the brim with non-token dragons. If Miram's on the battlefield, every time you put one of those non-token dragons on the battlefield, you are going to create a copy of it, even your legendary dragons. Also notice that it's an enters the battlefield ability and not a cast trigger, so it's even going to work with your commander's ability to put dragons from the library onto the battlefield. This card can even copy Ureni himself. Also want you to note that being able to make the token non-legendary is a big deal. You can even copy your commander yourself and get even more triggers. This is a top tier card for this deck, and it's an absolute auto include. If there's a single card from the editions I recommend adding, it's Miram. Our next edition coming in at $3.31, we have Monster Manual for 3 colorless and 1 green. It is an artifact that has an ability for 1 colorless and 1 green. You can tap it and you may put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. It also can be played as a sorcery adventure for 2 colorless and 1 green. You can mill 5 cards and return a creature card milled this way to your hand. Okay, so Monster Manual is in this deck because this deck has a lot of high cost creatures, and this is a way to get a lot of those higher cost creatures onto the battlefield much sooner and much easier. Your commander will help you by putting creatures onto the battlefield directly from your library, but if you happen to have drawn into some of those larger creatures, this is a good way to get them onto the battlefield without having to necessarily spend all of your mana on your turn. For this deck, the adventure side is a lot less relevant for us, but it is a way to fish for dragons or creatures if you're really desperate. We really want to be playing it for its primary artifact side. So this deck also does have a little bit of ramp, so there's a chance that you can get this card down early. And being able to get high cost dragons down for 2 mana is major. So one scenario that I happen to love this card for is if you happen to have Hellkite Courser in your hand. Bringing him in will actually get your commander in early for a turn, which is amazing because Ureni is going to trigger when it enters the battlefield. Hellkite Courser also gives Ureni haste in this example, so you're then going to also be able to swing. So for 2 mana off of Monster Manual and Hellkite Courser entering the battlefield, you're going to get 2 triggers off of your commander, which is absolutely amazing. Our next edition coming in at $2.75, we have Rhythm of the Wild. For 1 colorless, 1 red, and 1 green, we have an enchantment that says, creature spells you control can't be countered. Non-token creatures you control have Riot. They enter the battlefield with your choice of a +1/+1 counter or haste. So one of the reasons we like this card is because it's a great way to provide haste to your dragons and your commander, but also if your creature also happens to have haste already, you can just give it a +1/+1 counter instead. But the other reason we're really choosing this card is because we do not want our creature spells to be countered. This is a very big deal considering our creatures are very expensive, our commander included. This card just really helps with ensuring that Ureni hits the battlefield safely. Now, an alternative pick for this card slot could be Frostcliff Siege, which is from the new set, and it's also a really good card, and I love the fact that it has multiple modes, so it's really never a dead draw if you happen to get it later in the game. I don't think you can go wrong with either of these cards, to be honest, but I personally decided to go with Rhythm of the Wild due to the ability of not having your creatures be countered when cast. Your dragons are just too expensive, your commander included, and it's just too high of a cost to pay to bring in your commander and have it be countered if possible. If you happen to have both cards, maybe consider running both. They're both great additions. And the last of our additions coming in at $12.47, we have Urza's Incubator. For 3 colorless, we have an artifact that says, as Urza's Incubator enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Creature spells of the chosen type cost 2 less to cast. We're going to pick dragons. Your deck is absolutely filled with higher cost dragon creature spells, including your commander, so being able to get a 2 cost discount on each dragon is a big deal. Similar to the Dragon Speaker Shaman we spoke about earlier, if you can get to save the cost of dragons even 2 times, this card is more than paid for itself. This is a very good card, and I think after playing it a few times you will understand the power it brings and why it's at the cost that it is. So we've now made it to the removals part of this video, and our first removal will be Breaching Dragonstorm. For 4 colorless and 1 red, we have an enchantment that reads, when this enchantment enters, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card. You may cast it without paying its mana cost if the spell's mana value is 8 or less. If you don't, put that card into your hand. When a dragon you control enters, return this enchantment to its owner's hand. I think this card's actually a fun card, and it's actually got a really neat design, but for 5 mana, you really want it to hit a big dragon, and there's just too much of a chance for it to hit something that's not. I do like the fact that it will allow you to keep the card if you want to instead of playing it. The other sort of drawback with this card is you'll notice that it does say exile, but it doesn't say anything about putting those exiled cards back into your library or anything like that. So there is a chance that you end up exiling mana that you might need. Our next removal is Draconic Lore. Coming in at 5 colorless and 1 blue, we have an instant that says this spell costs 2 less to cast if you control a dragon. Draw 3 cards. This is definitely a thematic card, however I think sources of repeated card draw will work out way better for you in the long term for this deck. So in this case I would just replace this with Garruk's Uprising, and I think you will get a lot more out of that card. Our next removal is Dragon Master Outcast. For 1 red, we have a 1/1 creature human shaman that says, At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 6 or more lands, create a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying. So this is a fun card, however this would definitely be better in a more dedicated landfall, sort of heavy ramping style deck in my opinion, because you'll be able to benefit from this card much earlier than in later turns of the game. Otherwise, you could just play this early and be waiting around till way later in the game before you could even see a single dragon from it. Our next removal is Harbinger of the Hunt. For 3 colorless and a red and a green, we have a 5/3 creature dragon with flying, where you can spend 2 colorless and 1 red. This creature deals 1 damage to each creature without flying, or you can spend 2 colorless and 1 green, and this creature deals 1 damage to each other creature with flying. So this is a dragon for 5 mana for a 5/3 with flying. It does have decent abilities on it, but the problem is that they're just too expensive to really use. And in my opinion, it's too expensive for me to want to keep it in this deck. I would much rather put in a different dragon, such as Cavern Horde Dragon, for example, or Miram, or any of the other additions that we laid out earlier. Our next removal is Leyline Tyrant. For 2 colorless and 2 red, we have a 4/4 creature dragon that has flying. You do not lose unspent red mana as steps and phases end. When this creature dies, you may pay any amount of red mana. When you do, it deals that much damage to any target. So this is one of the more cheaper dragons to get out on your battlefield, but honestly, this is a 3-color deck, and both of the red only mana abilities are not going to be as relevant as you think they might be here. So unless you're just looking to hold up a bunch of your red mana that you have for its last ability, there's probably much better ways to spend that mana. This card would go much further if you were probably 2 colors or honestly monocolor. Our next removal, we have Nesting Dragon. For 3 colorless and 2 red, we have a 5/4 creature dragon that has flying and landfall. When a land you control enters, create a 0/2 red dragon egg creature token with defender, and when this token dies, create a 2/2 red dragon creature token with flying and pay a red. This token gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Now, even though you do have some ramp in this deck, I don't think that you will really be creating enough eggs or enough small dragons to really make this card worth the 5 mana investment that it costs. The pumping on the small dragons is okay, but keep in mind, again, this is a 3-color deck, so it's not like you have an endless supply of red mana here to be putting them out to pump them up to make them stronger. This is a really neat card. I actually really enjoy it. I just think it belongs in a different deck. The next removal we have is Skargan Hellkite. For 3 colorless and 2 red, we have a 4/4 creature dragon with Riot. This creature enters with your choice of a +1/+1 counter or haste. It also has flying, and you can pay 3 colors and a red. This creature deals 2 damage divided as you choose among 1 or 2 targets. Activate only if this creature has a +1/+1 counter on it. So this dragon does have Riot, so we do get the choice between a +1/+1 counter or haste. And in most instances, I'm probably going to choose haste unless I'm getting it from one of our other sources. However, the major drawback to this card, in my opinion, is if you don't choose the +1/+1 counter or have a different way to get a counter on it, you can't use the other ability it has, and also it's kind of an expensive rate to pay 4 mana to do only 2 damage. So for those reasons, we're going to cut this card. Our next removal is Stormbreath Dragon. For 3 colors and 2 red, we have a 4/4 creature dragon that has flying, haste, protections from white, and for 5 colors and 2 red as Monstrosity 3. If this creature isn't monstrous, put 3 +1/+1 counters on it and it becomes monstrous. When this creature becomes monstrous, it deals damage to each opponent equal to the number of cards in that player's hand. So this is an okay card. You get a 4/4 flying dragon with haste and you have the ability to make it monstrous later. However, it's going to cost you 7 mana to do that. And I think for 7 mana, you would rather just be casting something a little bit more impactful, like one of the bigger dragons that we have. The monstrous ability on it is kind of a neat bonus. However, it's also a little bit awkward in that it's dependent on the amount of cards in your opponent's hand. So again, it's just going to be quite variable to see how beneficial that ability really is for you. Our next removal is Stormshriek Feral. For 4 colorless and 1 red, we have a 3/3 creature dragon that has flying and haste, and you can pay 1 colorless, 1 red. This creature gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Alternatively, you can also play it on its Omen side, so it is a sorcery Flesh Out. For 1 colorless and 1 red, it says discard a card. If you do, draw 2 cards. Then you shuffle this card into its owner's library. It's an okay card in the fact that it gives you some options. However, either side is honestly, in my opinion, not really good enough for me to want to keep this over any of the other upgrades that we mentioned in this video. This was honestly one of the first cards that I cut from the deck. And here we have the last of our removals. It is Varix Bladewing for 2 colorless and 2 red. We have a 4/4 legendary creature dragon that has Kicker 3. You may pay an additional 3 as you cast this spell. It also has flying, and when Varix Bladewing enters, if it was kicked, create Karax Bladewing, a legendary 4/4 red dragon creature token with flying. So even though this is one of the more cheaper dragons to potentially get out into the battlefield with this deck, you can't really use the kicker ability when you're bringing this creature out with your commander. So alone, that reason was enough for me to want to cut the card. I just think that there's more impactful creatures that you are going to want, and it's just going to cause you a feel bad when you're using your commander's ability and you hit this card and you're not going to be able to take advantage of the extra dragon that you get if you could have just paid for the kicker by casting it on its own. Honestly, Miram or Cavern Horde Dragon are just better options. We have made it to the no budget options part of this video, and we are starting things off for $38.13. We have Cavern of Souls, which is a land that says as Cavern of Souls enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. You can then tap it to add a colorless, or you may tap it to add 1 mana of any color. Spend this mana only to cast a creature spell of the chosen type, and that spell can't be countered. Even after removing a few dragons during the removals part of this video, the deck is still absolutely filled with dragons, and we all know dragons tend to be a higher mana cost. So by choosing dragon with Cavern of Souls as it enters, it allows us to protect our dragons from being countered whenever we use it for mana to cast the dragon spell. This card is especially nice to have on the board whenever we want to cast our commander Ureni, because the last thing you want to have is your 7 mana commander countered. This card is just a great insurance policy to ensure that our commander and other key dragons hit the battlefield. Our next no budget option, coming in at $21 even, we have Dracogenesis. For 6 colorless and 2 red, we have an enchantment that says you may cast dragon spells without paying their mana costs. I was so excited when I saw that they printed this card. This is basically Rooftop Storm, but for dragons. Yes, it's expensive to get out, but when you do get this out, if your opponents don't have an answer, that's pretty much the end of the game. You're going to play not only your commander, but every other dragon that you have for free. We also have another card in this deck called Thundermane Dragon, which will allow us to look and cast spells from the top of our library. Dracogenesis will work from that, so you might be able to hit multiple dragons in a row and might be able to play them for free off the top of your library. This is just such a powerhouse of a card, and honestly, being able to play your dragons and your commander for free will do a lot for you. And here we have the last of our no budget options. We have Roaming Throne coming in at $33.62. It costs 4 colorless. It is a 4/4 artifact creature golem with Ward 2. As Roaming Throne enters the battlefield, choose a creature type. Roaming Throne is the chosen type in addition to its other types. If a triggered ability of another creature you control of the chosen type triggers, it triggers an additional time. This card is just an absolutely amazing card in pretty much any typal deck that exists. However, this goes really far in this deck because your deck is filled with dragons with strong triggered abilities, including our commander. If you have this card on the battlefield, including any of our other haste enablers, the turn that your commander comes into play, you could trigger Ureni's ability 4 times. Twice from when he enters and twice from when he attacks. You can just do so much with this card. So if you either happen to have one or you're looking to just really upgrade this deck further, you should really consider adding this to your deck. It's important to note that this doesn't become the chosen creature until it enters the battlefield, so you won't be able to choose it if you happen to use your commander's ability to try to put it onto the battlefield. So we've made it to the other considerations part of this video, and this is where I'm going to talk about a couple of things that I think you can consider if you wanted to optimize this deck even further. The first is that MDFCs, which stand for modal double face cards, are truly easy includes into any deck, and you can pretty much just get rid of any single basic to replace it for whatever the corresponding color is. So for example, for this deck, I would put in Disciple of Freyalise. It's one of the perfect MDFCs for this deck. You do have to sacrifice a creature, but you have a lot of high-powered creatures in this deck, so you'll be able to get some life gain and some card draw out of it if you absolutely need it. And sometimes you'll just probably use it for land, but having more options is always good. Another great option for this deck is Sink into Stupor. It has the ability to either bounce a spell back to your opponent's hand or return a non-land permanent back to their owner's hand. Both are great options and are very relevant to you either protecting your board or stopping your opponent from progressing their plan. So the next thing I wanted to bring up is I'm personally not a big fan of dual color lands that always come in tapped. So I would consider getting rid of the temple lands that scry in this deck, and I would put in either the Commander Bond lands, Spire Garden and Training Center, or the Verge lands, Thornspire Verge and Riverpire Verge instead. Now, if you don't happen to have those cards but want other options, I would literally find any other dual colored land that have the chance to come in untapped. Now, these usually have some sort of condition that you have to satisfy for them to enter untapped, such as having 2 or fewer lands or 2 or more lands in play. But even having the chance of having it come into play untapped is better than it always coming into play tapped. And there we have it. After upgrading the Temur Roar Precon deck, we have a final upgrade cost of $76.01. This total does not include the no budget options or the other considerations that we went over. I hope you enjoyed this Precon upgrade video. If you did, please like and subscribe. Also, be sure to let me know in the comments below what you think about the Temur Roar Precon. And if you would like to see it in action, you can check out the link below where you can see me and 3 friends battle it out to see which Tarkir Dragonstorm Precon takes the victory. Which of the other Tarkir Dragonstorm Precons are you excited about? Let me know. Until next time, thank you for watching.